Growing up, I had no problems with hearing. I could hear crystal clear. If anything, my hearing was better than most people. But then, when I was 6 years old, my hearing started to deteriorate. I had this rare disease that impacted my hearing abilities. It got to the point where I couldn't hear anything. I was deaf. I was so distraught. I was depressed that I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't listen to music. I couldn't listen to the birds. I couldn't listen to the TV. My life was ruined. And it was even worse at school. All the other kids made fun of me because I had to use sign language to communicate or write on pieces of paper. They would make faces at me. They would tease the way I used my hands. It was horrible. And it was so hard adjusting. It's easier for people who were born deaf. They don't know any different. But I knew what it was like to hear. I knew what I was missing out on. You can't miss what you never had, but I could. School was especially hard. I could read and write, but whenever the teacher spoke or taught class, I found it so difficult to follow along. I had been in lip reading classes, so I could make out some words, but I was still learning. Sure, I was only around 10 years old, so it wasn't so crucial that I be able to understand everything completely, but I still wanted to learn. I didn't want to be left out. Eventually, I got used to it. I could use sign language fluently, and I was an expert at reading lips. My classmates started to stop bullying me. Instead, I turned into one of the popular girls. They thought it was so cool that I could do sign language, and a lot of them asked me to teach them. I was just happy to have friends again. Things were going well. I had accepted being deaf, and I could move on with my life. But then, miraculously, when I was around 15 years old, my hearing started to come back. I have no idea how, but all of a sudden I could hear people talking around me. I could hear the cars driving past, the birds chirping in the trees, all of it. I was ecstatic. I was in class when I heard the first sounds, and I jumped in my seat. A few people looked at me weirdly, but they hadn't realized what I had. My hearing was back. But after class ended, they still spoke to me as if I was deaf. I was going to say something. I was. But then, I heard a friend of mine saying my name. I walked over and realized she was talking about me behind my back. She was saying I was so annoying, and she didn't really like me, that I was a brat. I was so hurt. I ran away, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't believe it. Was this what happened all the time? Did people talk about me a lot when I was right next to them? I was mortified. How could they do that to me? That's when I realized. No one had to know just yet. No one had to know I wasn't deaf anymore, that I could hear. Maybe I could use this to my advantage. Maybe I could use this to see who was talking about me. Maybe I could find out some secrets along the way. I know. This was a terrible idea, but at the time, I thought I was so smart. And I did find out a lot. You may think I should be ashamed, but you have no idea about the dirty secrets I heard from my time being deaf. But more on that later. I started to fake my deafness. I tried to keep it hidden. When there was a loud sound, I had to stop myself from looking in its direction. If I was deaf, I never would have realized. When the teacher said my name and I wasn't looking at him, I had to prevent myself from looking around. I had to wait for someone to tap me on the shoulder to get my attention, as if I really were deaf. And trust me, you imagine when someone calls your name, your first reaction is to look, right? But I had to ingrain it into me to pretend I was deaf, and it took a while. But I got used to it. One day, I was at my locker, and this cute boy was standing there with a bunch of his friends. At first, when they saw me, they were apprehensive, but I was facing the other way, so they relaxed. As long as I couldn't see their mouths, I wouldn't be able to hear what they were saying. Or so they thought. I realized they were talking about me. That's when I heard one of the cute boys, Sam, say that he had a crush on me. I was so excited and nervous. I tried not to react, but I could already feel butterflies rise up in my stomach. I was so happy then that I had pretended to be deaf. If I hadn't, I never would have realized I had an admirer. I immediately walked over to him, looking at him meaningfully. He seemed to panic a bit, probably because he thought I heard him, but then he seemed to remember I was deaf. Well, little did he know, I heard every word. Eventually, we started dating. I was pretty obvious with Sam, since I knew he definitely liked me, so it wasn't long before I asked him out. He was really cute, and I found it so funny how nervous he was around me. But there was this girl, Hannah, who always flirted with my boyfriend. I was so mad at her. I wanted to scream at her when she said inappropriate things to him, but I realized that would give away that I could actually hear, so I bit my tongue. But she could be so so aggravating. Like, there was this one time in class when I was packing my books in my bag and Sam was waiting for me. Hannah walked up to him. They were both behind me, so she probably didn't think I could hear. And she told him that she liked his haircut. She said he looked handsome. I barely stopped myself from turning around and slapping her in the face. But I had to use this to my advantage. I was pretending to be deaf for a reason, to see who was a true friend and who was fake. So I remained quiet. I would be at parties and I would be sitting there and people would be gossiping beside me, but they didn't care since I was the deaf girl. I would hear so many secrets, like how a girl in my class was pregnant, or how someone cheated on their partner, or how the teacher was getting a divorce, and so much more. No one knew it, but I was compiling a huge list of people I could blackmail with all this information. I realized I could start to use this for my own advantage. I found out that Hannah had a huge wart on her back. She would be so embarrassed if people found out about it. So I walked up to her at school with a note already in hand. I gave it to her. This is what I wrote. Hi, Hannah. I know about the wart on your back. If you want this secret to stay between you and me, then stay away from Sam. He's my boyfriend, not yours. She had looked up at me, her face already flushing red, and she had nodded. Fine, she hissed at me. I walked away, job done. I knew I didn't have to worry about Hannah being around Sam ever again. In those few years in high school, I became the notorious blackmailer of the school. If someone got in my bad books, they would surely regret it, because I had dirt on everyone, even Sam. I discovered his dad was in jail for some fraud activity, but I didn't bring it up with him. I wasn't that mean. Now, I'm not proud of it, but back then, I was a spoiled, tormented young teen. I liked to control people. You might be wondering how I managed to fake my deafness all that time. Well, it didn't last forever. I made one mistake that made everything fall apart. I was at a party, and Hannah was talking about me and my boyfriend. I was supposed to be deaf, so when I stepped backwards to hear a bit more clearly, they didn't seem to care. What I heard her say made me lose it. She talked about how Sam cheated on me with her. I couldn't help it. I turned around, screamed at her, spoke clearly, unlike a deaf person, and obviously gave away the fact that I could hear. Everyone was shocked. The music stopped playing. Hey, I thought you were deaf, someone yelled out. Sam walked over to me. Wow, you can hear again? I didn't know what to say. I had exposed myself. Everyone would know I was faking it. Hannah narrowed her gaze. Then I watched, helpless, as she suddenly realized what I had done. No, you faked it, didn't you? She said. I shrank back. Sam looked questioningly at me. What? That's not true, right? I said nothing. It was over. The game was up. What? That's crazy, a voice called. Jerk, someone else yelled. I scowled, turning on Sam. You cheated on me with Hannah? Sam's eyes widened. What? How did you... Ha! So that's why you revealed yourself. Hannah laughed. You heard me. Well, it's true. Sam and I kissed. Sam looked at her in shock. Hannah! Oh, who cares? She snapped. Your girlfriend already knows. I didn't know what to do. Sam had cheated on me, but everyone knew I had cheated them. Whose side would they take? Hannah looked at me viciously. Now I know. That's how you blackmail people. You heard everything, didn't you, you sneak? People started to whisper as they realized what I had done. Some looked worried as they searched back on all the things they had said in my presence. I saw now they would not be taking my side. I had lied to all of them. I had done something unforgivable. I didn't know what to do, so I bolted from the house. I went straight home, but I knew I could never go back to school. The next day, I told my parents I had to change schools. I couldn't go there anymore. My parents were so confused. You see, they still thought I was deaf too. I confessed to them all about it, how I had tricked people, how I had faked my deafness for the past year, and they were mortified. They couldn't believe I would do something like that. But eventually, they helped me out. Of course they did. They still loved me. We agreed I should move schools, get a fresh start, but the kids at the new school I moved to had heard about me. I was that deaf girl who faked her deafness. The news had spread around. Luckily for me, I only had 1 year left at high school, so I could escape it all at college. But that senior year was the worst year of my life. Even worse than when I found out I was deaf, really deaf, when I was around 10 years old. People avoided me. They left mean notes in my locker. They called me names. But this time, I couldn't pretend to be deaf. I couldn't pretend I didn't hear what they said, and that's why they took great satisfaction in making my life so miserable. I had no friends. Literally none. Even teachers heard about what I had had done at my previous school, and I could tell they looked at me with contempt. I don't know whether it was my own stupidity or just their bias, but I never got an A in that final year of high school. Now, I realize what a huge mistake I had made. I never should have manipulated people like that. I turned something amazing, the miraculous return of my hearing, into something of a weapon. I never should have done it. Well, I've learned my lesson now.
I was your regular teenage guy. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't a loser either. My friends and I enjoyed playing sports, beating each other at video games, and boasting about girls we'd been out with. My grades were average, and my family was boring and ordinary. My parents were rarely ever home because they were always busy working, so most of the time I was home babysitting my 2 younger twin brothers. Well, one day, my average life spiraled out of control. But before I tell you about how it spiraled out of control, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and when you do, something amazing will happen today. As soon as I got up, I could sense that something was wrong. I hopped out of bed to get my brothers ready for school as usual. I opened my bedroom door and began walking down the stairs. Before I was halfway down the stairs, I saw the figure of an unfamiliar man standing in the living room. He was poking some buttons on the television. It was extremely unlikely that my parents had let him in. We never had visitors. Was he a thief? I was terrified. "Mom! Dad!" I shouted. "There's someone in the house!" I screamed. The man turned around instantly and smiled at me. "Good morning, Simon. We were waiting for you before we started breakfast. Go, sit at the table. Hurry," he said. "Who are you? Who invited you over for breakfast?" I asked. "You're such a silly boy. Stop your jokes. Hurry, or you'll be late for school," he said. I went to the dining room hoping my parents would have some explanation for this strange man. When I walked in, I was shocked. Sitting around the table were 4 people, an old lady, a younger woman, and 2 little girls. They all had red hair and green eyes. I had never even seen these complete strangers in our neighborhood before, and I had no idea who they were. "Yay, Simon's up," shouted one of the girls. "What? Who are you? How do you even know my name?" I asked. "Ha ha ha, Mommy, Simon is being silly again," she said to the woman. "Good morning, son. Why don't you sit down? I made your favorite food," the woman said. "Why did you call me son? I don't even know who you are," I replied. "Now, Simon, you're taking your jokes a little too far," said the strange man as he walked in. "We've been waiting all morning for you to wake up. Eat your breakfast and get ready for school," he continued. He sounded stricter this time. I was totally confused, but I decided I'd figure out what this all was later. I ate breakfast and then left. As I was walking to school, I started to feel extremely scared. I still hadn't seen my parents that morning, and I wanted to know why they invited people over for breakfast and then left me there alone. Also, why did this woman call me son? I took out my cell phone and tried to call my mom, but it rang twice and then I heard nothing. I tried calling my dad, but it wouldn't ring at all. The last option was to go to my brother's elementary school to find out if they were okay. It was completely odd that they had left the house before me because I'd always walked them to school. I quickly changed directions and headed towards their school. When I got there, I went straight to their classroom and signaled to their teacher so she'd come to talk to me outside. "Good morning, Miss Harper. I haven't seen my brothers this morning. Are James and Oliver okay?" I asked. "James and who?" she asked. "My twin brothers, James and Oliver. They're supposed to be in your class. Are they here?" I said. "I'm sorry, but I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have anybody in my class with those names. I don't even think we have twins at our school," she exclaimed. She looked confused. Was she playing a joke on me? I pushed her aside and looked inside of the classroom. All the seats were filled, but there was no one who looked like James or Oliver. What was going on? I ran back outside and took my phone out of my pocket. Had they been kidnapped? Was the teacher paid to lie to me? I had no idea, so the most logical thing for me to do was to call the police. I quickly dialed the number and explained to them that there were 5 strangers in my house and that I could not reach my mom and dad. They asked me for my parents' names and my address. They told me to go back to the house and to wait for them outside. I went back home and stood behind a tree waiting for the police to arrive. When they arrived, I ran towards them. "It's me, Simon. There are people in my house and I don't know who they are. I can't get in touch with my parents, and I think that something has happened to my brothers," I said. They knocked on the door and the strange man opened it. "Good morning. Is there a problem?" he asked. "We received a call that there are people in this house who are not authorized to be here," said one of the cops. "What? This is my house, and only my family is inside," he replied with an innocent and confused expression on his face. "Liar!" I screamed. "You're not even from this area. I've never seen you before in my life," I screamed. I turned back to the cops. "He's a madman, and he's lying to you," I said. "Simon, what is all of this about? I'll show you proof that I own this house," he said to the cop. He invited them inside and went to get a folder. He opened it and handed some papers to the cop. "Our son has been acting a bit strange lately. We apologize for the inconvenience," said the strange man. "Well, you've got to get him some help. Cops are very busy and we don't really have time for this," the cop replied. "What? You believe him? I don't know who these people are. Please help me," I said, but before I could finish, the cops had left. "Simon, please calm down. Go to school and we'll talk about this later," he said. "I don't know who you are and these strange people are, but I'll get to the bottom of this and you'll be sorry," I screamed at him and stormed off. I ran to school, and when I got there, I planned to go straight to the principal's office. In the hallway, I bumped into my close friend, Kyle. "Hey, you're late today," he said. "Kyle, listen, something really weird is happening. This morning, I woke up and my family was gone. My house was full of people I'd never met before in my life. A mom and dad, a grandmother, and 2 girls. They all look alike and they pretended like they've always been there. I don't know where my real parents are or my brothers are. I called the cops, but they did nothing. I'm totally freaked out and I don't know what to do," I said. "Dude, you're totally off your rocker. Your brothers, you say? You've never had brothers. You just have 2 little sisters, Eloise and Anna," he laughed. "Anyway, hurry up or you're going to be late for chemistry," he added while continuing to laugh. He walked away and I ran towards the office. "I need to speak to Mr. Harris. It's an emergency," I said to the secretary. "Okay, just hold on 1 second, Simon." She smiled at me and got up to get him. He came out shortly after. "Simon, shouldn't you be in class? This better be a real emergency," Mr. Harris said while motioning for me to enter his office. I sat down and explained the situation to him while he looked at me with a serious face. When I finished, he looked at me sternly. "So you say the people in your house aren't your family. However, the people you described to me are the people I've always known to be your parents. Do you think I have time for jokes? I'm a very busy man. Have you been taking anything?" he asked. I was bewildered. "Taking anything? What do you mean? Like drugs?" I replied. "Teenage boys tend to experiment sometimes. I'm just letting you know it's dangerous, and if you're taking anything, you need to stop. Anyway, I'm going to speak to the school counselor about this. You need to talk to someone," he said. "And quite frankly, they don't pay me enough to deal with crazy students," he muttered under his breath. "Mr. Harris, what do you mean? I am completely clean, and I've never tried a drug in my life. There is nothing wrong with me. I'm telling the truth. Why won't you believe me?" I screamed. "Make your way to the counselor's office immediately. I will call her right now," he replied emotionlessly. I could not believe it. I got up and turned away, feeling defeated. I slowly made my way towards the counselor's office. When I arrived, she was waiting for me. "Principal Harris just called. He sounded worried. Have a seat, Simon, and make yourself comfortable. Can I get you anything?" she said. "No, thanks," I replied while I sat down. "What's going on? Tell me everything and I'll try my best to help," she said. I told her the whole story and she just stared at me. "Please tell me you believe me," I said at the end. "Well, it is quite difficult to do that because we all know your parents and they're the exact same people you described as being in your house this morning. Listen, Simon, if you're taking anything illegal, you could risk ruining your entire future. These substances are also harmful. I'm going to recommend that you get tested and afterwards we will take it from there. Please go back to class," she said. I left her room and slammed the door. I walked into my class and sat down angrily in the back. Suddenly, everyone turned around and started laughing at me. "We've heard you've totally lost it, Simon," shouted Jenny, the most annoying girl in class. "Oh, I just woke up and I can't find my family," the class bully Greg mocked. Everyone laughed again. I turned to Kyle. "Did you tell them?" I asked. He turned away and started to laugh. I felt betrayed. There was absolutely nobody I could count on. The cops thought I was crazy. The principal didn't believe me. The counselor thought I was taking drugs. And now, my best friend made the whole class believe I was a lunatic. Quiet down, quiet down. It's time to get back to work. Our chemistry teacher tried to shout over the laughs. You know what? All of you shut up. I'm going through the worst time of my life right now, and all you can do is laugh. I stood up and screamed. I grabbed the closest chair and threw it across the room. All the laughing stopped, and everyone looked shocked and frightened. Go to the principal's office right now, the teacher shouted. I left the room and went to sit outside of Mr. Harris's office. After a few minutes, I was called inside and asked to sit down. I'm very worried about you. First, you came to me with this ridiculous story, and now you're throwing furniture across the classroom, he said. My story isn't ridiculous. It's all the truth, I replied. He said he was going to call my parents because my behavior was unacceptable. The strangers arrived after a short while and looked frustrated. We all met and they all decided that I had lost my mind. Many months passed and my biological parents still have not reappeared. I was sent away to live in a psychiatric hospital for teenagers because I refused to accept that these strangers were a part of my family. I became very angry and continued to have tantrums because nobody would believe me. Everyone was convinced that I was crazy. Life is better here, though. I have new friends and I have more time to think about how to find my family. Plus, anywhere is better than being with these invaders who are now living in my house. One night, I was walking home after closing up the diner late at night. I hated working so late, but I needed all the money I could get for college. It was dark and foggy, which I found odd. Suddenly, as I was walking past an alley, someone touched my elbow. It was an old man. He smiled at me, but I honestly panicked when he reached into his pocket. I'm a tall guy, so I thought I could most definitely take him in a fight, but I didn't want to fight an old man. Before I continue, remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when we release another awesome story. The old man reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. He placed it in my hand, tipped his hat at me, and disappeared into the fog. I walked over to a street lamp and unfolded the small paper. It was a lottery scratcher. I chuckled, thinking some crazy old man just gave me his trash. But the ticket wasn't scratched. I reached into my pocket and grabbed one of the coins I got in tips that night. I used the coin to scratch the ticket and shook my head, thinking I was seeing things. It said I had won $1 million, but nah, it couldn't be, right? That only happens to the luckiest of the lucky, plus some sketchy old dude gave it to me. It's probably a fake. I shoved the ticket in my pocket and laughed at myself for believing it was real for a second. I threw my jacket on my nightstand when I got home and fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. The next morning, I saw the ticket as soon as I opened my eyes because it fell out of my jacket and was right next to me. I put it against the light, seeping in through my curtains. Not gonna lie, it still looked kind of fake to me. After stretching, I walked numbly to the kitchen and made myself some breakfast. I was still looking at the ticket, mostly wondering why that old man gave it to me. Was he just trying to prank a kid? My gaze drifted towards the fruit bowl next to me. It was full of old scratchers that my mom had bought. She always had faith that we'd win something one day. I compared the scratcher to my mom's old ones. It started to look pretty real, but I still thought it was a prank. My mom then came into the kitchen. She was rubbing her eyes and yawning, but when she saw what I was holding in my hand, she jolted awake. Is that? Let me see. She snatched it out of my hand. I tried to tell her it was fake, but she was already jumping and hugging me. I didn't want to break her heart. Without even finishing my breakfast, she pulled me out of the house and dragged me to the post office. She was friends with the lady who worked there and sold scratchers. She basically shoved the ticket in the lady's face, and I was about to tell her that it was fake when the lady screeched and started jumping up and down, congratulating my mom. My mom proceeded to say it was my ticket, not hers, and the lady instead came up to me and started squeezing my cheeks, calling me a very lucky young man. I was still in shock when she shipped the ticket off to redeem the prize, and even more in shock when we were actually called to redeem the prize and get my money. I just stood there, flabbergasted in front of the cameras, holding an enormous check for $1 million. My face was on the news next to the amount I had won. Everyone that knew me knew that I had just won a hell of a lot of money. But now, I wish they hadn't known. When I went to school that Monday, I could immediately tell it was different. People swerved out of my way when I walked, or said hi to me when they had never done so before. My friends were actually very affectionate, which they weren't before. It took some getting used to, but after a few hours, I loved the attention. When my friends and I went to get lunch somewhere special, I paid, of course. I also paid for gas when we went to the beach and for snacks, too. I even rented a boat one time and we went out to sea. My friend, Rachel, dropped her phone in the ocean, so of course I had to surprise her with a new one. My friend Malik needed a new laptop, so I bought him one. One time, I even paid for everyone's lunch in the school cafeteria. The lunch lady just shook her head at me. "They can afford their own stuff, you know. Don't let them take advantage of you, boy," she said, but I dismissed it. They were my friends. They wouldn't take advantage of me. I drove my friends to the mall one day and we spent hours shopping. First, we went to get video games for Jake. Then Rachel wanted a suitcase set, and Malik said he needed a suit, so we got that too. I got the rest of my friend's stuff as well. I just honestly can't remember what it was. I was basically just swiping my card left and right whenever they told me to. On the car ride back to their respective homes, I was waiting for them to thank me, but they never did. They were all on their phones or taking pictures of their new stuff, and they ignored me when I tried to strike up a conversation. I was kinda pissed off. Was that how parents felt? My friends barely even said bye when I dropped them off at their houses. What the hell? I was mad when I got home. I felt like my friends were just using me, exactly like the lunch lady said they would. I was in class a couple days later with my friends Rachel and Malik. I put my earbuds in and put my head down after telling them I had a headache and needed a nap. I didn't play music though. Instead, I listened in on their conversation. "You should just throw it in the bin or something, or just give it to someone else," Rachel said to Malik. "Yeah, I think I'll do that. Bet he'll get me a new one without a second thought," laughed Malik. When the bell rang for lunch, I yawned and pretended to scratch my eyes. I watched as Malik pretended to accidentally throw his phone in the garbage at the front of the classroom and snicker with Rachel. I was fuming. I fished it right out and pretended I saw nothing. I got to our cafeteria and found a distressed Malik and a worried Rachel along with our other oblivious friends. I calmly asked Malik what was wrong, and he went on a rant on how his parents were going to kill him because he lost his phone, pretending to hyperventilate. I put my hand on his shoulder to calm him down. Then, I pulled his phone out of my back pocket. "See, your parents won't kill you because you just threw it in the trash expecting me to buy you a new one." Then, I smashed his phone into the ground, and hearing the screen shatter, I said, "Damn, I guess they will kill you after all." And with that, I walked away. I distanced myself from everyone for a while. I ignored them in the halls and in class, and I blocked them on anything they could contact me through. They knew I needed the money to pay for college and for my siblings to also go to a good school, but they took advantage of me. It wasn't just my friends. If I went grocery shopping, people would pretend they forgot their cards and ask me to pay for them. I always pointed out that I could very clearly see their card in their back pocket, and then they'd mumble something about me being greedy. For real? Me? Greedy? Bold of them, honestly. I decided that I was going to stop paying for people's purchases and giving my money away to anyone, and would instead make it interesting. I delivered flyers all over the neighborhood and to everyone from school. The news of what I was organizing spread like wildfire. At the school's annual festival, I had a mini lottery. I was giving away a third of all the money I won with my lottery scratcher. The festival was bigger that year than ever before. There were over 100 people on school grounds, hoping to get a ticket and win some money. There were loads of tents with food and rides and booths for kids. As I walked around, I could tell people were buzzing with excitement, as they should, because they all thought they were gonna win. I left notes with people when I delivered flyers or told them in person that they were going to win. I told everyone that if they kept it to themselves, I would give them the winning ticket. Finally, the time came for the raffle. People gathered in the football field and I went around with a bag full of little tickets with numbers on them. I personally passed them out to people and smiled sheepishly at them as they winked at me or shook my hand, thanking me in advance. The last person who got a ticket was Marie Ann, the lunch lady. Her ticket, however, didn't come from the bag. It came from my pocket. She looked tired of having worked all day long. She sat down and I saw her rubbing her knee. "That knee still bothering you, Marie Ann?" I asked. "Yeah, the doctor said it's pretty bad," she responded, deflated. I then walked up to the podium and tapped the mic. I made a little speech just to excite everyone more. And then I announced the numbers on the winning ticket. 7, 3, 9, 2. Everyone was quiet. I heard some little "what?" and curses, and then came a shrill scream and a laugh. Marie Ann was holding the winning ticket high in the air. I guess the adrenaline numbed her knee for a second because she managed to run all the way up to the podium and showed me her ticket. I smiled wide and shook her hand. "It's what you deserve," I said to her. People around us started booing me, so I turned back to the mic and said, "Every single one of you started taking advantage of me when I won my money. She is the only one who didn't change. All of you should be ashamed of yourselves." 2 days later, I was closing up the same diner. I kept my job because that one was fun, and some extra money never hurt anyone. I started walking my normal route, but I felt some tingling in the back of my neck when I approached the alley. Suddenly, the old man walked out of it slowly, and I was face to face with him. The man started coming at me, so I squared up. But to my surprise, he hugged me. He hugged me tight, and it didn't feel weird at all for some reason. "I knew you would do the right thing," he said to me, patting me on my cheek. His hand was oddly cold. I was still thinking about this encounter with the man when I arrived at home. For some reason, my eyes drifted towards the photo albums in my bookshelf. I never looked through those. I grabbed one that seemed to stand out. I looked through it absent-mindedly, but a picture stood out. It was me as a baby, and I was on the shoulders of a man I had never seen before. That's when it hit me. The old man was my grandpa. The grandpa who had passed away when I was very young. When I tell people this story, they get scared. But honestly, all I feel is warmth and happiness. My family will only talk to me if I send them money. I dreamed that I was flying like an eagle high above the mountains. I felt free and powerful. It was the best feeling I had ever felt, until I was woken up by my phone's message tone. When I opened my eyes, I realized just how much pain I was in. Everything hurt. I was hurt in places where I didn't even know I had places. My ribs were the worst. When I finally reached down, I saw that I had several missed text messages from my brother Paul and my half-sister Suzanne. I could practically hear their voices in my head as I read. I saw my older brother Paul's first. "Hey, you bag of butt cracks. Don't forget to put the money in our accounts by 5 p.m. today. Dad almost blew a gasket when it went in at 5:15 p.m. last month." Paul was the favorite and firstborn son. My dad took him when he walked out on my mom, and when I was 4 and Paul was 8, Dad said it was because he was more self-reliant. Then I read my half-sister Suzanne's. "Daddy wanted to let you know that he will cancel the party if you're late again." I heard her condescending voice as I read it. To be fair, she spoke to everyone that way except for her daddy. That one time I was late, when I was stuck underground on the subway thanks to an overenthusiastic duck. Right, I thought to myself as I slowly got out of bed and made my way to the shower. As I passed by my face in the mirror, I noticed how beat up I was, but didn't give it a second look. The hot water felt amazing. When I was 11, my mother suddenly passed away. With no other family, my dad and his new wife had to take me in. They gave me a small room in the basement, a list of my share of the chores. Beyond that, I had to fend for myself with my brother and my 3 half-siblings. The oldest, Suzanne, Paul, middle son, who's about a year younger than me, and Lena, the baby of the brood, who just turned 17. The fact Suzanne was a year older than my older brother Rick was never lost on me. I got a job when I was 14 and saved up until I had saved enough to move out. Just as I was leaving their house for the last time, they presented me with a bill. That's not a joke. My family wanted me to pay them back for everything. How much I owed for back rent, to how much time my father and stepmother helped me with my homework, to how much I owed my other siblings for watching me when my parents were out, and so on. Even my younger half-siblings gave me a bill for the amount of attention they no longer got from our parents since I moved in. My stepmother made it very clear when I moved out. I'll never forget her message. Unless I pay back every dime I owe, they will all turn their backs on me for good. After I was dressed and ready to leave for work, I heard a knock on the door to my apartment. "Wow, Wyatt, you look like shit. I wonder what the other guy looks like." Those words came from my neighbor, coworker, and my most recent cage-fighting opponent, Henry. I couldn't help but chuckle as his face looked almost as bad as mine while he handed me coffee. Several years older than me, he was the closest thing I had to an actual brother. He kind of took me under his wing shortly after I started my job at the firm a few years ago. Because it doesn't pay quite as much as my family wants, I started cage fighting in an amateur league. As we made our way to the subway, Henry explained that, dude, you gotta learn to protect the body. Take away the body, take away the fight. Chance a win. My mind drifted to last night's fight and the feeling of his shin connecting with my ribs in a devastating kick. I may have screamed on impact because I went down. Don't worry, man. I won't tell anyone that you screamed like a little girl before you hit the mat. I promise. I heard him say in my mind. So, it was a war cry, not a scream. I'm sorry if I scared you, I shot back. Don't worry, he said. I'm not going to tell anyone at the office. He was texting when he said it, and I'm sure he was telling everyone. On the subway ride, I told him about the situation with my family, including today's news that they were threatening to not invite me to my own birthday party. That they expected me to fund them with money that no doubt will not be spent on me. The worst part is my older brother and sister and I were all really kind of close at first. But when I missed a payment earlier, they turned on me. I almost couldn't believe the words coming out of my own mouth. He listened patiently between subway stops. In his usual bluntness, he gave me some sage wisdom. The hell with them. They sound like jerks. Spend the money on yourself for once, man. They were my only blood. I couldn't just walk away even if I didn't even like them anymore. The hour-long trip to work felt twice as long because of how much pain I was in. If Henry was in near as much pain as me, he sure didn't show it. We got to the office right on time, by which I mean we were right on time for our boss to catch us running late. This could have gone a few different ways. What the hell happened to you two? Were the first words out of the mouth of our boss, Mr. Gorsh, a balding man in his 40s, and wire-frame glasses as he looked at Henry and me. What can I say? We were both really determined to get the last chocolate donut on the way to work, was the only thing I could think of, followed immediately by Henry, who said, in our defense, people say those donuts are a real scream. And my ribs and pride now both hurt. Our boss shook his head and told us the next time we were late, we'll get written up. Thankfully, I was busy enough that my day went really quickly, despite the pain. A lot more of my colleagues asked me which one of the Scream movies was my favorite throughout the day, as opposed to the 0 times I've been asked that before. I was filling reports, writing reports, and photocopying reports all day. My ribs hurt so bad I skipped my lunch. The clock on my phone said 4:59 p.m. I watched the seconds tick down on the clock by my desk. Not just waiting to clock out, mind you. I made sure all the money was transferred at exactly 1 second before it was 5 p.m. My only silent F-U victory. Within seconds, I got a text from Lena with a photo of a chocolate cake and a message that read, "Hope to see you soon." I rolled my eyes before making my way to the office door where Henry was already waiting for me. As I did, one of my coworkers slapped me on the back and said, "Look out, war crier," as he passed me. I paused for a second, then kept moving. Hey, Henry, did you tell anyone in the office about my war cry? You mean your scream? No one, not at all, he replied. As if on cue, Brenda, gorgeous, the girl of my dreams, who works in our office, passed by us and said, "Good night, Henry, and you too, Wyatt. Don't make the girls scream too much." I turned to Henry. You were saying, Henry? Oh, you meant our office? He replied. Our office, yes, I shot back. Then everyone, yes, I told everyone. I think some people on the 2nd and 3rd floors know, actually. Gotta block that body, man. Next time this won't happen, he said to me as we made our way down the busy street to the subway. Seriously though, Wyatt, your striking is getting better. Your ground game is solid. Your main weakness is you forget about defense. The better the defense, the better the odds of a victory, said Henry. Next time, I'll beat you, I said. His only response was a quick wink and a shake of his head. By the time we got to the station, we got on different trains. It took a few buses and another hour or so before I was finally at the family home on the edge of town. It was a nice house once that had seen better days. They were not neglected as much as just worn by age and use. When I arrived, I only found Lena and Rick, a single piece of cake and no gifts. Lena was too busy FaceTiming with her boyfriend in Canada to give me more than a passing, "Hello, happy birthday, bye now," after she opened the door for me. I found Rick in the backyard laying on a lawn chair with a drink in his hand. "Hey," I called out to him as I walked into the yard. "Hey there, birthday boy," he said back to me as he lifted his head. "Welcome to your party." He had a sneer on his face that I just wanted to knock off. Some party? Where is everyone? I sent the money on time. Oh, no, I know, he said back. You just missed everyone. By which he meant stepmommy and my father left for a trip to the Bahamas for a week that morning. Paul was at his girlfriend's house, and Suzanne, well, I stopped paying attention when he mentioned her because I don't care where the hell she is, to be honest with you. I thought about leaving for a second. I thought about kicking my older brother's ass. Even with feeling like I had a building fall on me, I was pretty sure that I could. Instead, I sat down in the lawn chair near Rick and pulled a drink out of his cooler. He lifted his head and said to me, "That's $10, bro." I just stared at him for a long second before he finally relented. "Okay, but only because it's your damn birthday. But you only get the one. I have to ration these until I go to the store tomorrow." I opened my drink and looked up at the sky. We sat in silence for a minute. My mind wandered. Suddenly, Rick and I were in the ring facing off with each other. He threw a punch but missed my head. Then another also missed. He went to throw a third, but I caught him square on the chin with a punch of my own. He was staggered, and there were actual stars floating around his head. He put his hands up to defend his face, but I kicked him hard in the ribs with a left kick. His whole body shifted to one side as I connected. My daydream was broken by Henry's voice. "Hello, Earth to Whining Wyatt." I said, "How much longer are you going to be staying?" "I don't know," I said. "Don't you have to get up early for work?" He scoffed at me. He was right to. My work and wounds paid for this lifestyle. I took a long sip of my drink. "You know, Rick, I never wanted us to be enemies. You're the only real family I have. I didn't have a choice in how things worked out. I just wish we could be a proper family." His reply came in the form of a loud belch. I put down my drink and headed for the bus stop, thinking of my multi-hour trip home. As I waited for the bus, I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Henry. "What do you say we do a long weekend in Vegas next month?" Almost instantly, I got a reply from him saying one word: "Finally." This so-called excuse for a family isn't worth the money anymore. What they didn't know was the plan that I had made. I picked up my phone and called my bank. "Hello, I'd like to report fraud on my account. Several transactions." "Of course, sir. As a platinum customer, we will return any money to your account that was taken because of fraud. Now, it says here you are a cage fighter?" "Yes," I said with a grin, as I thought of the new life I was going to live. "Yes, and I live in Vegas." This was going to be great.
You know how scared you get when you are all alone in your room and you hear something go bump in the night? Or when you are about to bungee jump right at the edge of a cliff? Or maybe even that sick feeling at the pit of your stomach before a big exam? I bet you have these kinds of fears many times in your life. Well, the thing is, I have never felt fear at all. Not once in my life. Not when I was a baby, not when I was a toddler, and certainly not as a kid or teenager. My name is Krista, and believe it or not, I was born without the ability to experience fear. Sounds insane, right? You're damned right it does. My mom usually tells me about when I was a little baby. Back then, Krista, you never ever cried. I thought I had the quietest baby in the world. But the moment you began crawling, I couldn't let you alone for 1 second. You would dare do things no other child your age would. But before we move on, like this video, hit that subscribe button, and activate the notification bell. This will let you live 20 amazing years longer. Trust me, it works. I never called for her, never shied away from a big dog, tried to climb on every surface I could. I would try to drink shiny liquids, and of course, those came from the cleaning cabinet. Imagine how many times my mom had to rush behind me, stopping me from hurting myself. Now don't think that I never got hurt. I harmed myself plenty of times, believe me, and it hurt like hell. Fear and pain have nothing to do with one another. The thing is, I never connect those two things together until it's way too late. My parents, of course, took me to see lots of doctors and specialists. They run so many tests on me trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with me. They'd hook me up to these machines and play pictures and movies for me and measure my brain's reaction to it all. Apparently, as the doctors explained to my parents, the part of my brain that experienced fear simply wasn't active. Was Krista dropped on her head as a baby? One doctor asked. And this got my mom feeling awful about her parenting. She hadn't, but it got her thinking, What if she had done something to stun that part of my brain? What if it was her fault after all? She began crying and I felt awful about it. I got super mad at the doctor and told him off. So you can imagine that we had to leave that hospital pretty soon. It wasn't a nice day, but I don't regret standing up to that doctor for my mom. My parents, both my mother and father, were amazing toward me. And they were so patient, they didn't deserve to be pointed out as irresponsible or anything of the sort. I was just different. That was it. We never did discover why that part of my brain never worked. And when my parents tried to find out if there was a surgery that could fix me, the answer was almost always no. Some doctors did theorize it was possible, but the risks would be too high, and I could end up with long-term damage. It simply wasn't worth the risk. I hate watching scary movies, believe me. It's so annoying. I sit there, bored to death, while other people scream and squirm and cover their eyes. I just sigh and get super bored. The monsters are never scary to me, and the killers seem so foolish. I don't enjoy scary stories around the bonfires either, so I wasn't into camping with other kids. Do you know what else I never got to enjoy? Roller coasters or any other activity that produces adrenaline for the sake of fun. Nothing happens to me there. I just sit and get super bored of hearing people scream and flinch. It's super annoying, and people wonder what is going on with me. Believe me, if I had a penny for every time I heard someone ask, "What the hell is wrong with you?" I'd have a fortune. It was almost inevitable I began hanging out with the daredevil crowds when I started going to high school. I think that I was trying to finally get that thrill I had never experienced before. They pushed me to try crazier and crazier stunts, and the danger levels kept raising every single time. My mom would freak out so badly. She begged me not to do it anymore at first. Then she scolded me. Then she grounded me. God, she tried everything, the poor woman. Krista, honey, you need to understand. You can't feel fear, yes, but you can get hurt. And you do so often. How many times have you been to the hospital? People will think I'm a terrible mom. When you are about to do something, stop and think if I would do it. If the answer is no, then don't do it. Mom would try to reason with me like this. And in theory, it sounded cool. I mean, I could just stop and think if mom would do it or not. But in practice, I never got to that moment. It was only later that I realized how much I had messed up. I can't even tell you how many times I got home with my jeans ripped, with scrapes and bruises, or far worse. My friends got me really into parkour, and we would go to the park and try these crazy stunts all the time. It was really fun. They would dare each other to do these insane moves, and I was the only one who always accepted it, no matter how crazy. I was a kid doing stuff no other daredevil dare try, so you can imagine how bad it got before long. I actually broke my arm 3 times, my right ankle once, and my left ankle twice. I had to go to the emergency room so many times, and I even had to visit a physical therapist twice a week for like a year. It got really bad, and my parents were super worried about me. Something else that I could do so easily while my friends really struggled with was asking guys out. I never ever had a problem with that. The girls I hung out with would wait and wait and wait for the man they liked to ask them out on dates. They were too shy or too afraid of rejection to take the first step. I never cared at all if I was told no. I just walked up to a cute guy, grinned at him, and then asked, "Hey, would you like to go out with me tonight?" Plain and simple. Some guys even looked a bit stunned that I was so straightforward. Honestly, I rarely got told no. Most of them said yes, either because they liked me or because they were impressed by my boldness and wanted to give me a try. It was really fun not to be waiting around for someone to take me out on a fun date out, you know? So at least there was a good side of never experiencing any fear. I was the very first one of my friends to get a date to homecoming, and it was because I just walked up to him, the dreamiest guy at school, and asked him to go with me. It was expected he would ask the head cheerleader to go with him, but he was impressed by my attitude and instead decided to go with me. We ended up dating for an entire year, though it didn't work out in the end. We are still friends, though. He's a pretty cool guy. In college, I met Gavin, the most amazing guy I had ever known. He wasn't only handsome, but so damn smart and witty. He made me laugh every single day. And when he discovered I couldn't experience any fear, Gavin made it his life's mission to try and scare me shitless. He tried so hard, the poor thing, but nothing ever worked. We soon began dating, and he would come up with super creative ways of making me finally experience fear. He'd jump out from dark places and scream at me. He'd hide underneath my bed and wait till I laid down to grab my hand. He even waited in the parking lot, dressed as a big monster, and tried chasing me around. Every single time, I just stared at him in a mix of confusion and amusement. He was always so adorably frustrated. I actually thought it was cute, but he got super frustrated. To me, it was fun, and I like that he tried so hard. If I have to be honest, I'd love to know what being afraid feels like. I feel kind of lonely sometimes, like I can't understand an important part of human nature. Some people think I'm a freak, and who knows, maybe I am. The problem is, experiencing no fear can always put you in truly dangerous situations. Let me tell you about the time I almost got stabbed because of my problem. You see, I was just walking through the park late one night. Of course, a normal girl might not do something like that, but I didn't really feel any kind of fear about it. Suddenly, a guy sitting on a bench called me over. He had ragged clothes and looked dirty and disheveled, but he didn't really seem like a danger to me. So, not feeling that instinctual panic anyone else would in those circumstances, I walked over to him, and then the man pulled a knife on me. "Give me all the money you have or I'll cut you," he threatened, expecting me to do as I was told due to fear of being harmed. Instead, I just stared at him blankly and shook my head almost nonchalantly. "No way, dude, I'm not giving you my money," I told him, clearly shocking him. The guy stabbed at me and I jumped out of the way. I realized it was a dangerous situation, so I did try to get away from there, but it wasn't because I was afraid or anything of the sort. Instead of following behind me, the guy just ran the other way as well. He was the one who seemed to be scared. I'm sure that he had never encountered anyone like me before. When I told my boyfriend and my parents about it, they really freaked out. That's exactly what they had been worried about for so long that would happen to me. What if the next time the robber did harm me? Well, thankfully, it's never happened again. And I do try to avoid dark places when I'm alone now. Mom begged me enough that I gave her my word, and I don't like breaking the promises I make. Gavin and I are still together to this day. He is amazing, even if he kind of annoys everyone around us with his constant attempts to scare me. Usually what he achieves is to startle someone else in the process. My mom scolded him so badly one time that he stopped pulling those pranks whenever she was visiting. I really don't mind though. To me, it's kind of adorable and fun. I'm probably never going to be able to experience any kind of fear, but by now I've sort of accepted it as a part of me, just like the fact that I'm a brunette and have freckles. So that's my story. Thank you for watching. What would you do if you suddenly could no longer experience any kind of fear? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos on the channel.